I'm Jim Fisher of Fischer Compliance. Today I'm going to cover in the SSMP update best practices to the Santa Ana River section. Very pleased to be here today, and thanks to Ralph Palmeras from El Toro Water District for inviting me. A little bit about my background. I retired about a little over a year ago with the State Water Board, formerly managing the Sanitary Sewer Overflow Reduction Program and also being the statewide lead for enforcement for many years at the State Water Board. So I have Fischer Compliance now. When I started, I'm helping agencies, mainly cities and a few special districts lately with really optimizing operations, reducing risk for violations, enforcement, and undesirable attention. So that's what I'm doing. I just wanted to briefly mention for a minute or so a webinar that we did last for SARBS here in July, just fairly recently. And I will click on it just to kind of give you the highlights of that. It's available on YouTube. And I will cover that at the end, where to find that. But I'll just quickly go through here and give you a little narration of this webinar. Basically, audits and enforcement and a lot of do-it-yourself. We have a lot of do-it-yourselfers out there. Tips, agency BMPs, and some recommendations. We talk about enforcement. We talk about the process of economic benefit, how to be selected for an audit or not. Some of the enforcement actions here that we covered, and a little bit on some tips about how to cover your system in terms of your own audit. Sam Rose with Sam Rose Consulting did a really amazing part of this on vulnerability, risk assessments. How do you assess your system? What exercises can you do? What risk mitigation factors should you consider looking at your system holistically? This is a very, very detailed presentation, about 30 minutes worth. Again, I highly recommend going to YouTube and looking at this so you can go back and review what was covered. And that was just a few months ago if you haven't seen it. So again, it'll be available on YouTube. I'll have a link at the end. Okay, continuing on here to this presentation, we're going to have 5 different parts, starting with the SSMP assessments. How do you assess your SSMP? What questions might you ask yourself? And then talk about some compliance. And I have an interview also here with the Carmel area wastewater district with Rochelle Lather, who's a very experienced engineer. Talk about some enforcement updates so everybody's aware, mainly for regions 4, 8, and 9 in those water board regions. What's happening down there. A little blurb about the draft updated sanitary sewer waste discharge requirements. I'm going to end with a number of slides on some audit tools that are available, some produced by my company, Fischer Compliance, to help go through to find any kind of possible violations or areas of concern. So these are some of the questions. I'm going to thumb through these pretty quickly. If you want to go back and look at this video, these are some of the top resilience questions that we're using with our audits about how to maybe look at your system, talk about, look at yourself in the mirror a little bit more in detail and really drill down on what's happening. These are definitely questions that I asked as a water board inspector when I was there for many years, over 12 years. Again, I have a lot of these on here to give you the inside scoop, inside baseball. Your engineering and operations collaborate, number 14. We're going to cover that one in a little more detail with Rochelle Lather from Carmel in a bit about how she does all that work. So I really highly recommend going through here. I think there's about 28 of these or so that we have. We presented these before at the annual conference, but I thought I'd highlight them again because this is a real easy way. Again, we have a lot of do-it-yourselfers out there. Look at your own program out there. You may not need to bring somebody in. There are definitely benefits of bringing somebody in, but without bringing anybody in, you can go through these on your own to really see what's going on and, more importantly, get yourself ready and resilient for an audit by inspectors or maybe even an NGO. Moving on to compliance, I thought I'd leave a couple of tips on what does that look like? How do you assess compliance? I have a couple of pieces of information here just to show in the audits I'm doing, I'm helping people with how do you look at the elements and how do you maybe review those and come up with some findings. So you'll see here the element D13, I. Not only is there a goal, but there are other elements related to the goals. I highly recommend looking at this. This is how the water boards does this. They look at everything in the permit as a matrix, maybe not just one element on its own. So I really highly recommend looking at these in detail like this. And citing your sources. In the audits that we do, we're using the pre-inspection questionnaire. That is a fantastic tool. Again, that's available on the State Water Board SSO Reduction Library. And also, with our approach, a little bit different. We actually conduct a compliance evaluation inspection, CEI, and issue that report as an attachment to the audit to really make the audit an objective evaluation like the water boards of the EPA would do for your audit findings. So, and the SSO data files, of course, are one more excellent source. So this is what it looks like in terms of the findings, the output work products for an audit. You can also do this yourself. Really looking at your effectiveness is something that we highly recommend. A lot of the audits that I've seen over the years, and I continue to see, don't really highlight the effectiveness very well. So this could be done a lot better. These are some examples of what happened here with one of the districts that we looked at, areas of concern, things that could be added, and then really importantly, the best practice recommendations that will really help for updating your SSMP yourself. You may not need to bring somebody in again, but having this key audit information will absolutely help you get the most bang for your buck with your SSMP update. So that's just a couple of examples, some of these, of how these work. And again, I highly recommend doing that yourself and going through that. I'm going to highlight now some examples of what Carmel is doing and talk to Rochelle Lather with Carmel, who's a very experienced engineer who's been through enforcement, who's done manhole inspection program, GIS work with their system and so forth. So this is about a 6-7 minute piece I'd like to play. I think will really help everyone and reveal a lot about what they're doing with their program. Let's take a listen. So it's really great to talk to you, Rochelle, with Carmel, and it's been really interesting working with you over the years since you started. You know, we started working together when you were at Santa Cruz County Sanitation District about 10 years ago, and you know we did an enforcement case there together, and you were really great to work with. So now you're at Carmel, and maybe you could talk about kind of when you came into Carmel, what you started with in terms of helping them out.
Well, because you'd already put me through the ringer at Santa Cruz County. I came into Carmel and there were a number of items that I knew needed to be completed. They might have been started by my predecessor, but he didn't get around to finishing them. So I looked at what we needed to do in case we had a spill in the future and somebody came knocking on our door, and we wanted to be prepared. So the first, and some of this I actually created on my own, the plumbing ordinance, the administrative penalty ordinance, because you have to be able to enforce. And we really didn't have that. And I worked with our attorney to get that established. So the first items that I did was get approval of standard plans and specs, plumbing ordinance, and administrative penalty ordinance. And in the plumbing ordinance was the lateral replacement requirements for sale of property. And of course, we copied all the good people's work. We didn't make up our own. So I did a lot of outreach to other agencies that had good programs.
Great. And you have a pretty amazing collaboration with Daryl, who is the operations superintendent. And
yeah,
that's really a special thing you have there at Carmel. And
yeah, and it's really the only way you're going to make things truly happen. Sure. And progress. If you don't have a good relationship between engineering and operations, it's difficult to get anything done. Now,
okay, that would be a really great future presentation to maybe give all of us some more details on that. How to
so
set up
the other thing that I did do within the first year is I hired a consultant that helped me update the SSMP, because I looked at it and you know, you don't want to be mean, but sure. But when people that do their own SSMPs or set it up a certain way, because their perspective is operational, but there's two parts to it, which is what I learned from being inspected by you, is that there's the engineering studies and the capacity and the basically the developing a capital improvement program part, and that was lacking. And then there were some details on the other side that on the more operational side that we needed, and also the admin penalty ordinance part. We didn't have that. We didn't have really strong way to enforce the requirements. And somewhere in there, we got a phone call or an email or a letter from Riverwatch. But
Okay. NGO.
the funny part was that I was already looking at projects and that were along water bodies and planning to replace those pipelines already, because that's what I knew also was a high priority. The thing that I'm working on right now that's going to be done, and all of these, you just have to kind of have the mindset that you need to do it and try not to get too discouraged or lose focus in order to get them done. But this pre-treatment ordinance, it was dropped on my lap. I don't know why, but I've been working with the treatment plant people, because they're in charge of pre-treatment in our facility. And what we took was the EPA sample ordinance, and then I went through the whole thing, and we're talking mind-numbing reading, right?
Yeah.
Sort of like reading that WDR that they gave us a draft of. And so I was the treatment plant operator, the superintendent, and the pre-treatment lead manager. And we're going to get that. And then I had to go through our attorney, and we had a pre-treatment committee of 2 board members. And so it's taken me a while, but we're going to have it hopefully approved at the end of September 2021. So
fantastic.
And then after that, we're going to have to figure out, we're going to try to beg, borrow, and steal from other agencies good ideas on how to do outreach.
Excellent. That's something that we can help with too. We're talking to so many, statewide, that, having that extra perspective on what others are doing outside of the region that might be a little specific to that region, but another region like Region 9 in San Diego. So we can definitely help share that information. That's part of the reason that we're doing these trainings, to communicate that information with other agencies.
This is our current CIP, and I've been
great.
Anyway, I've taken every project and either highlighted it, crossed it out, moved it to another year.
Fantastic.
Because it's not a high priority.
Reprioritizing the risks and the money.
I'm reprioritizing the risks, and also like I thought we were going to have to do manhole rehabs every year for 10 years, but it looks like we don't have that many that really need to be rehabilitated.
Okay.
So
fantastic. Well, I really congratulate you on the great work you're doing there, and thanks for your time again to sharing with others that are out there struggling with how they set up their program or improve their program. We really appreciate your perspective, and we might hit you up for a future webinar on 1 or 2 these other specialized areas.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks again. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Okay, great. Well, thanks again to Rochelle and to Carmel for putting themselves up here on the platform to show us what they're doing. So it was a really great piece. And again, I highly recommend anybody that's interested in learning more about what they're doing to contact Rochelle and Daryl at Carmel. So thanks again. Next, we're going to give a quick enforcement update. This is something we get asked a lot, take a lot of calls on, hey, what's going on in the enforcement world? So I thought the last 5 years, I'll just give a kind of quick update on what's happened. And there's this ridiculous chart here that CWIX has, but the things to pay attention to are the investigative orders here and the administrative civil liabilities and the NOVs. There are 3 areas I'm going to cover a little bit here, just in the next couple slides. So for Region 4, and Region 8 and Region 9 will be the 3 that I'll focus on here. Other regions that are really interesting to look at would be Region 2. They've issued a lot of notice of violations, like dozens and dozens, for failure to comply with the non-discharge violation, non-discharge requirements, the amended MRP, Monitoring Reporting Program. Those are violations, the 3-day reporting, the certification timelines, the notification timelines, draft timelines. So those are something to pay attention to with the NOV. So I'll just cover real quickly some of the ones that are out here. This is probably one of the bigger administrative civil liabilities that are very interesting here. For this was actually a Alameda Quarter East, a construction project authority. It was part of a project, a very large project, broke one of the force mains, or I believe it was the gravity main for the Los Angeles County Sanitation District's sewer system. And so the board issued a pretty hefty penalty here in Region 4 for $1.2 million against the actual construction authority, not the enrollee, the LACSD, which is great. They really recognized them as a really good performer. And the punchline on this one is, if you have a good program and you get some recognition from the regional board, it can really pay off. And the LACSD, specifically, if you go to the SSO library, has a report, an inspection report in there, where the board was very impressed, the region and the state board, with their program. So, if you have things to highlight, it pays off later, because the board knew going into this, when this happened, that LA had a good program, sewer program. So they were very, very specific to look at the construction authority that basically broke their main line from inadequate stormwater control. So it's a very interesting administrative civil liability. It's available here on the link. There's 4 violations in here. They basically violated Water Code Section 13385A2 for the general permit. Again, the construction general permit. 13376 for discharging concrete and sediment into the Rubio Wash. This goes on and on, but I thought I'd highlight just the violations that are called out in here. 440,000 gallons of raw sewage without WDRs, and again, that comes from the breaking of that pipe, subjecting them to basically the ACL, Administrative Civil Liability, under Section 13385A15. Very, very common portion of the Water Code. And the last one, the 8,500 gallons of other sewage without WDRs. Again, so these are the ones to look at. You can learn from these. The reason I bring these up is a really good idea to go back and study these, again, to avoid that any potential for threatened enforcement. Because if not, you don't know what enforcement's about. It's pretty hard to prepare for it. And once it happens, it's too late. These would be another good thing to watch, or notice as a violation. Again, this is a signal by that regional board that, hey, something's wrong that we don't like, and puts some of these agencies on the watch list. Can you get off the watch list? Absolutely. And we can definitely highlight ways in the audits we're doing to get you some recognition of what you're doing. Everybody can improve. And so this is basically, NLV is basically, hey, you're not doing something right. We're going to give you a chance to improve that and respond to the board. It's a non-formal action. You don't want to get one of these, but if you do, there's a way out of it, definitely. Along with ACLs, I should say, also. And these are ones that have just been issued recently in Region 9 to keep an eye on. Again, you can go to CWIX. You can contact us if you want details on these. We have all these orders. But these are the orders to search on, the agencies to search on. Again, to learn from them. We can all learn from, everybody, on what happened, what the regional board looked at, what were their priorities, what was the process they used to go through and assess penalties for those entities. So again, some more NOVs. Again, the signal, non-formal action by these agencies. Again, ones you can go back and look at that are really high. I highly recommend looking at and studying. Again, so you're aware of what's going on in your region. And this is an area that we really lean into in our audits. We can provide that perspective on what the region thinks, what they typically have done in the past, what they might be likely to do with the sewer system compliance and enforcement. So again, just having these, looking at these, great. These are the technical reports, the Water Code Section 13267, that basically gives the board authority to require information, technical information. Here are several that have been issued. Again, these are really great ones to learn from. Again, these are for discharges that happened. The board sent out a letter saying, tell us everything about it. We want a technical report. And it's also required under the MRP, amended MRP, also for 50,000 gallons and larger SSOs. So that's just basically a quick update. I just wanted to also give an update on the sanitary sewer waste discharge requirements draft. As probably many of you know, the board back in March, I think it was February, issued an informal draft. Really key thing here, informal draft. This is not actually a draft order. This is an informal draft that's about an 80 some odd page document that came out. CWA, CASA, SCAP, other agencies, other entities leaned in here to help everyone sort of lean in and give a lot of thorough comments as you probably know, on this informal draft. So up till now, we've seen nothing in terms of an official draft from the State Water Board, and we're anxiously awaiting. We're told we'll probably see something by the end of the year. Again, we'll update you as soon as we know any more. Okay, moving on to a few other things in Audit Tools. I wanted to cover this with some detail because some of this stuff is new, even newer than what we covered in the SARBS update for the Santa Ana River Basin section in the summer of 2021. So these are some of the tools that we have that we're looking at here just to help everyone kind of get an idea who might get selected for an audit, who's been selected in the past, looking at different SSOs. And we have a new tool that we developed for looking both at the SSO discharges and non-discharge violations. To take this data real time here from the flat files that you all know are available, I'm sure everyone knows this, on the SSO reduction website. This is where all your different data files from CWIX are available that are updated, I believe, at midnight every night in CWIX. So we have a new tool that we've developed, our company, to basically look at the compliance in minute detail to come up with some really, really great ways to compare agencies like this tool here to really look at how does a particular agency compare with the small, medium, and large agencies in the state, in the region, looking at their rolling averages here with a click of a button to see, again, to see how they compare. What we're after here with these audits, a piece of this audit, is to get some recognition from the board, especially here with this agency, to see where they are in terms of they're below, both the some of these averages for small, medium, and large agencies in the region. So again, more information here about detail about how many reached waters, how many didn't. This is again available, a report that we have for our audits here, just to kind of highlight here, again, comparing this agency that's nameless here in the in this example with other agencies in the state and in the region. Another new thing that we have is looking at the non-discharge violations. So this is really important. What's the non-compliance look like for the reporting and the notification? I was floored to see some of these 44% non-compliance over the course of the entire program from 2007 to present. And this agency, I believe, only had like 66 spills. So, 44% of them are non-compliance in terms of timeliness, notification, draft within 3 business days, or certification within 15 calendar days here. So this is very important, something to keep an eye on. With all the audits that we do, we have this tool where we can click a button. Even if you have 2,000 spills, it will give you this data in just a moment. So again, that's really important to look both at, I'll scroll back both to the some of these, how do you compare with others, and the non-discharge, and the discharge and the non-discharge violations, again, to really keep that perspective going in the audit and not lose sight of what the board or the EPA might look at in their evaluation, because they look at everything. They're not just going to look at the 11 elements in the SSMP. They can look at your records. They can look at how compliant you are with SSO reporting, no spill reporting, the questionnaire on time every year, you name it. So you don't want to be called out for any of these violations. So again, this is available, something that we're doing with our audits. So this is, again, just to highlight that there's things beyond just the 11 elements in the SSMP. We covered this in our last presentation. How are you implementing it? Training, SOPs, your record keeping, monitoring your program. Is your monitoring program good for large SSOs? Or do you have that bacteria indicator? Do you know what that's all about? Having all that under your hands is super important, because that will be looked at in an audit. It's very likely to be looked at, not just the 11 elements that are typically skimmed over with some of the audits that we're seeing. So that's sort of our recommendation. I'll kind of walk through a little bit more detail what we're doing and recommending. Again, you can do this on your own, recommending following the US EPA process for the 5 steps in developing an audit of your system: the desktop review, pre-inspection conference, compliance evaluation and inspection, really using their standards on their website, I'll show in a minute, and then doing this review and developing those recommendations for the final audit. That goes well beyond best professional judgment. People that are doing these, this gives a real objective way to say, hey, your final audit report is going to be based on the standards largely from the CEI that come out of that for the final report. So really objective way of doing it. This is the manual. Again, we've shown this many times, available for free. It's on the MPDS website here. You can click on that, go to it. You're going to have all these different pieces at your fingertips. This is an example of what the compliance evaluation inspection looks like that we're developing here, which pretty much mimics that of what the water boards has done in the past. So you can be, this is again a way to sort of really call out the way I showed this earlier, the way you're kind of looking holistically at the order, coming up with a review system, coming up with findings that are sound based on the CEI, compliance evaluation inspection, and giving some real specific best practice suggestions that can very seamlessly be folded into the SSMP, to update the SSMP. Another real key area that's highly recommended for auditing your SSMP or doing an SSMP audit are key performance indicators. Coming up with new ones. And I wanted to show some of the ones just for goals. And some of the things that we're taking on are looking at key performance indicators for every element in the SSMP, both A, for good compliance, B, for good resilience for any kind of scrutiny, and C, more importantly, to keep track of what's going on at your fingertips so that you have a really good way to measure and check and satisfy your management, satisfy your board that you're doing all you can to protect public health. You're measuring how much you're conveying, you're measuring how much you're spilling. So these are some of the things you could highlight here in this key performance indicator. These are definitely some of the ones that we're recommending with our company and we're using in the audit findings that we have. So here's a few more. Again, under goals, properly managing, operating, and maintaining. That's writing the orders, but how do you do that? How do you check that? I'd say very few agencies are doing a lot of this, but this can be done. Annual review of your maintenance plans, measuring things. Are staff performing the plan as needed? Does it need to be tweaked? Or desired outcomes being produced? Again, ways to really practically implement these KPIs are really highly recommended. If you want more videos, we have about 8 or 10 videos that are now up on YouTube. You can go to the YouTube channel, and those are available for download here at Fischer Compliance under YouTube. And so thanks for watching, and I'd be happy to answer any questions and answers right now. And I'll leave you with my contact information here at the end for any questions, for follow-up questions. But thanks a lot for having Fischer Compliance today. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the interaction. Thank you.